I don't understand why. No, I do understand why. I just wish people would stop doing it. Why people feel the need to argue over which web browser makes you the good and moral person, which web browser is the correct choice to make. Because here's the fun fact. Maybe something in the future will change this, but all the ones that we talk about, they all suck. Every single one of them. Chrome and Edge are owned by American megacorporations that don't care about your data privacy. Opera is owned by a Chinese company that probably has ties to the CCP. Now, don't be tricked into thinking I'm saying one of these is better than the other. They're all terrible. They all don't care about your data. Brave is full of crypto nonsense and didn't pay out Linux affiliate deals, which I'm still very annoyed by because, you know, personally affected by that. And all of these are just Chromium under the hood. Safari isn't even part of the discussion unless you're on a Mac and is also owned by a giant megacorporation. And Firefox, the only actual real competition, was driven into the ground by awful leadership that were just sucking the company dry for every little dollar they can take out of it. Now, I think most of the engineers working on the open source Chromium project and people working on Firefox are trying to do a good job. But when the management above you just sucks, there's only so much you can do, especially in the Firefox case where it seemed like for the longest time, they just didn't care about market share, and even though market share was dropping, the upper management was taking more and more money. So I always find it kind of funny when I read through posts like this. Firefox versus Brave. Now, they don't just have it for Brave, they have it for Chrome, Edge, Safari, and Opera as well. Basically, comparing Firefox with the general competitors out there. Now, this is what you would expect from any sort of company that wants you to use their thing. This is just an SEO page, so if you search Firefox versus Brave or Firefox versus Safari, this should be one of the first things you see. And it reminds me of those charts you see where on the left-hand side is the product we're trying to sell. On the right-hand side is our competitor. We have every feature. Our competitor has none of the features. And the comparisons they're making are just things the other product is just not trying to do. Now, normally I wouldn't really care to talk about Firefox just making a comparison post. You know, everybody does that. But one of the people at Brave got very annoyed by it and decided to go and unpack every little thing that was being said. However, it was done very much from a Brave perspective, with Brave being the thing that is like good and Brave being the best choice that everyone should use. So a couple of things were skipped over. Now, for the record, I want to make this clear, right? I use Brave, I use Firefox, I use Chromium because they're just pieces of software. Like, I mainly use Firefox, that is my primary browser, but I do have Brave around as well for certain things, and I have Chromium around in case either of those break. Like, it's just software. Just use the software. Firefox's privacy settings are strong and easy to use. Firefox is often treated like, you know, the privacy option, and that's the way it generally markets itself. Well, we don't have to go and test this for ourselves because other people have done that testing for us, and Firefox is a better option than Edge or than Chromium. However, it's not as good of a choice as Brave. Brave has a lot of other things it deals with, but also, the part that's just not mentioned by Brave is a worse option if you really care about your privacy than LibreWolf or Molvad browser. Like, I know they're trying to sell Brave as this great solution, this great private solution, but neither of them actually come out ahead if pure privacy is the thing you're actually aiming for. Granted, when we're talking about things like LibreWolf, that gets to a point where privacy starts to become a hindrance. So this is the problem you see, right? Privacy and convenience, or security and convenience, is always a trade-off. You do not get to have something that is fully private and fully convenient. Now, you would if people weren't trying to steal your data. The problem is people are trying to steal your data. So in that world, you kind of have to deal with the trade-off, and you kind of have to deal with the point where you are happy, where you are giving away enough convenience that it's private enough, you are getting enough privacy, and it's still convenient. And different people are going to have different metrics they work with there. Brave's default ad blocking may break websites you visit, so you have to keep fiddling with it. Now, this is true to an extent, right? We've all used Brave, and we've all had issues where just random sites cause an issue. You have to disable the ad block, and then it just works. But I wouldn't say the option of enabled or disabled is really having to fiddle with something, because that's the same level of annoyance as you get with something like uBlock Origin. It's on or it's off, and that's as much thought as most people put into it. I guess if you want to be pedantic, having to either turn an ad blocker on or off is like having to fiddle with it, I guess. But it's not the way that most people would consider it. But also, a lot more importantly, Firefox doesn't have a built-in ad blocker, right? So the comparison is Firefox is convenient to use because it doesn't have an ad blocker, versus Brave, which is less convenient because it does have an ad blocker. Like, you're not even comparing the same things. We want privacy to be convenient enough that you'll actually use it. Out of both Brave and Firefox, they're both as convenient to use as each other, right? And like, when you install an ad blocker into Firefox, even more so, they basically become an identical experience. Maybe UI stuff is in slightly different locations and things like that, but that's the only real difference in the experience. Now, what I will say is, if we're talking like 2 or 3 years ago, Brave's ad blocker was so much worse. There were so many sites I just had to disable it on, where it wasn't even like ads on the site. It was just breaking some core element on the site that it needed to function. Things have gotten better. It's gotten much more sensible filtering. And at least from my experience recently, I haven't seen anything break, right? Outside of ads, where ads are required for the site and they do some weird stuff to like tie the ads into the actual function. Outside of those cases, I haven't seen any case where I need to disable the Brave shields. Now, this is the real fun one. Firefox makes it easy for you to choose which search engine you want to use every time you search. Brave defaults to their own search engine, and you have to go through the browser settings to pick something different. This is very interestingly worded. It's not entirely inaccurate, but it is intentionally leaving out context to make Firefox look considerably better. So what is being talked about here is a feature that I just never have interacted with, but I guess is something that exists. So if we click the search bar, down the bottom here, there are options to search with different things. So if I want to search with Brave Search, I want to search with Google or eBay, I can click this button and then search with that instead of my current search engine. You're also able to configure what you actually want to be here. So if you don't want to have Google, for example, you can untick that, or Wikipedia, or if you don't have Brave Search installed, you can get rid of all those as well. That's cool. Now, in Brave, it does not have this feature. If we search for something, it's just going to have the thing you want to search for. At least it doesn't have the feature in the same way, because it literally has the exact same feature. Brave Search supports a thing called bang searching. So if I write !G, hello world, this isn't going to search on Brave Search, it searches on Google. If I do the same thing with !W, this does a search on Wikipedia. So by defaulting to Brave Search, it literally has the same feature. And because it's in the search engine and not in the browser itself, it's gonna be in every single browser that you make use of Brave Search in. Now, to be fair, this isn't just a feature in Brave Search. DuckDuckGo does the exact same thing as well. But to say it doesn't have the feature is just not at all true. It is fair to say that it is slightly less convenient to use because you need to know about bang searching. You need to know what commands you use to actually go and search different search engines. I'll grant you that. But that's all I'll grant you. Now, doing this thing in Firefox where you go and click the little button, that doesn't change your default search engine. If you want to change it, you change it in the exact same way that you change it in Brave as well. You go into the settings, there's a little option for it, and then you change the search engine. So, both browsers change the search engine in the exact same way. Both browsers, technically Brave doesn't have the feature, but by defaulting to Brave Search, it does have the feature to temporarily change your search engine. They literally have the same feature. Now, Brave might default to their own search engine, but let's talk about the browser that wants to talk about having strong privacy settings, defaulting to Google. You know, that very privacy-respecting search engine. Google would never do anything bad with your data. No, 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 no. And the reason why they default to Google is because they're being paid by Google to do so. So, you cannot in one post say you have strong privacy settings that are better than your competition and also be on Google. Now, here's the part that Firefox does a lot better that was conveniently left out of the Brave post. I know I've been ragging on Firefox the entire time, but don't worry. Don't worry, Brave does some fun stuff as well. Firefox gives you the option to encrypt your passwords, and you can use a primary password to access them. Your passwords are protected even if you have to share a computer. Brave does not password protect your passwords. So this is if you store passwords in your browser. I don't do this. I don't think anybody should do so. Use a password manager, please. Use a password manager. I don't care what it is, but KeePassXC, Bitwarden, pick something. Now, confusingly, Firefox is talking about two things at once again. Firstly, both Firefox and Brave encrypt passwords you save in the browser. Not only Firefox does that. Some people seem to think the passwords are stored in plain text. This is very easily disproven by looking at the file the passwords are in and seeing they are encrypted. I don't know how anyone thinks they're not encrypted. You can literally see them. The only times they are being decrypted are when you go to the thing that shows you the password you have listed, or you export a password to use on a site that wants the password. You know, the times where you actually want to be able to see the passwords. Now, what Brave doesn't do is provide the ability to use a master password. So if you're logged into the OS user account and you open Brave, all of the passwords are gonna be visible. Now, on Windows, there is some Windows Hello integration, and on iOS, there is support for a PIN, but for quite a while now, for 5 years, there have been people asking for a master password system for the passwords in your browser. And there's also been an open issue on the GitHub since 2021. Feature request, master password for Brave desktop version. I genuinely don't understand the apprehension to adding this feature. If you're gonna have a password manager in your browser, which, as I've already said, I'm not a big fan of anyway, you need to have a master password system. Like, that's a basic requirement. Otherwise, you shouldn't have the feature. Now, the logic from the Brave side is, I guess, technically makes sense, kinda, sorta, but the idea is you shouldn't be letting people use your OS profile. So if you want people to not be able to go into your browser and view your passwords, when you walk away from your system, you should lock the system, which is fair, but that's also not a reason to not include a master password. You should also have a master password, so if you do walk away from it, they have to still enter that password. Now, here we get to the, hey, look, these are the features that we have. Our competition doesn't have any features. You can edit PDFs in the Firefox browser, and you can translate a web page locally and privately. If these are features you care about and you use, hey, they're nice features to have, but if you don't, then they're literally worthless. In the same vein, Brave has features that don't exist in Firefox, so if you use those features are valuable, but if you don't, the features are worthless, right? You get what I'm saying here? Firefox is establishing a position that weaker privacy protection with convenience is a product win, that defaulting to feeding your info to Google is somehow a benefit over an independent private Brave search engine. This is privacy dilution under a veil of convenience, while Firefox enabled their browser-level ad analytics without bothering to ask users beforehand in July of 2024. Now, I talked about this when it happened. It's not as bad as a lot of people made it out to be. This wasn't some, like, mass data collection thing that Firefox was doing. However, they did a really, really bad job by not explaining what they were doing, by not being very, very clear about this is exactly our purpose, this is why we're doing it, this is why you were enrolled, and better yet, letting people choose from the start whether they even wanted to be involved with it. Yes, there was a toggle, but it was enabled by default, and enabled by default is just not a thing you do with anything at all related to collecting data. And as for Brave using Chromium, yes we do. We harden the hell out of it. Open source software is beautiful, allows for building from user-first principles to correct user-hostile business ethics corruption at scale, and Chromium is good. Now again, like I was saying before, the actual privacy browser isn't either Firefox or Brave, it's LibreWolf and Mulvine, which are based on these projects, but like, they're still not the most private option available. So what you have is the people who are the kinda mostly private options arguing about who the most private is, whilst the actual private solutions aren't even part of the discussion. Again, there is not a good web browser. All of them bad. All of them suck. Just pick one. Or pick all of them. Doesn't even matter. Maybe don't pick one of the proprietary options because there's not really a good reason to use a proprietary browser, and they're probably doing more spooky stuff. But even the ones that are open source, they're still like kind of messing around and not doing a great job. But what do you think? Do you think there is a good browser? Do you think it's Firefox or Brave or, I don't know, whatever browser you use? I would love to know. So if you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the Pay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I'll write my own web browser. Blackjack and hookers.